The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 133.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. You've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity. Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding!
Position us.
Wearing a red fin.
Fantastic.
Hell, Scottish. I can complain about things.
Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing The Fires of Pompeii, a 10th Doctor story, or is it a 12th
10th.
Doctor, or 11th? I'm just kidding.
Somewhere in there.
It's a 10th Doctor story, but there's more than one Doctor in it.
And more than one companion in it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we'll get into that in a second. But joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thank you. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like the Secrets of Doctor Who posts when we put them up on Facebook at our Facebook page, facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. So like the page and then like the posts and then share them with your friends. Be sure to retweet the posts when we put them on our Twitter account at SQPN and leave us comments. All these things help us to juice the social media algorithms and get the podcast out there so more Doctor Who fans can see it. And that's what we're all about. We want to spread the joy of sharing Doctor Who. I do want to promote a new show on the StarQuest network called American Catholic History. This is a weekly podcast by my friends Tom and Noel Crow. It's under 10 minutes long, once a week, and they cover an interesting story or person, usually and very often something you've never heard before, from an American Catholic who's contributed something based on their faith to our nation, if you're an American, over the past 300 some odd years. So, including before independence. If you're not an American, it's still a great way to hear some great stories. The first few stories are really excellent, and I hope you'll subscribe to it. It's at sqpn.com/history, and check it out. It's just a quick listen, under 10 minutes long each time. So I recommend that. So today, though, we're talking about this 10th Doctor story called Fires of Pompeii. It features David Tennant as the 10th Doctor and Donna Noble as his companion. It originally aired in April of 2008, and this is the third episode of the fourth season. So Donna has now been with the Doctor. This is her third time out with him. And we talked about... Is it a 10th Doctor? Is it the 12th Doctor? So here's the deal. This is, if you don't recall, the 10th Doctor tries taking Donna Noble to ancient Rome for her first trip in the TARDIS, but miscalculates. They end up on Pompeii on, as they put it, Volcano Day. Mm-hmm. And that's where they encounter a marble salesman by the name of Caecilius. And he is played by Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. And then we also see as actually a minor player, a couple of speaking lines, Karen Gillan, and we'll mention when she shows up too when that happens. But so it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting. We have, like we often joke, every British actor eventually shows up on Doctor Who at one point or another.
And Doctor Who has a history of actors coming back at starting as a minor character and then coming back as a major character. Colin Baker was in a 5th Doctor story set on Gallifrey as a guard.
Yep, who
later came back as the
Peter Davison.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then later came back, obviously, as the 6th Doctor. So this is something, and it's happened other times as well. So this is something that's happened throughout the history of Doctor Who, that actors will come back to play a more prominent role at a later time.
Interesting. So the interesting thing about this one is that Stephen Moffat, who will be the showrunner at the time of Peter Capaldi, he incorporates this into the story at the time. Mm-hmm. So what was the name of that episode? It was when they met Ashildr with the Vikings, that sort of thing. I had that at my tongue, and now I forgot it.
Yeah.
But they
the girl who died.
The girl who died, the woman who lived. Yeah. Like it was a two-part, two episodes. Yes, but I think it was the girl who died, and he says that in that episode, he shares the face of Caecilius. He purposely chose it during his regeneration.
Well, not purposefully, but chose it.
Or subconsciously chose it.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah. The face of someone he thought he couldn't save but did.
Right. And it's the line, it really plays into the line at the end of the episode of, where Donna says, if you can't save the whole city, but can you at least just save one?
Right.
And that was kind of what he was reminding himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Interestingly, there was apparently another explanation, because this is not, Caecilius is not Peter Capaldi's only other role in the Doctor Who universe. He also plays a British, I guess, government official in the Torchwood Children of Earth thing. And Russell T. Davies apparently had an explanation for why Caecilius and that government official would have the same face. And when Stephen Moffat cast Peter Capaldi as the Doctor, he called Russell Davies and said, "Does your explanation still work?" And he said yes. And apparently they were going to use that explanation, but they obviously didn't, because it isn't the one that is eventually provided of, I picked a guy who's the face of a guy who I thought I couldn't save but did, because the Doctor didn't appear in the Torchwood thing and thus didn't save the government official.
Okay. Interesting.
There are also other fan theories that have been around in Doctor Who fandom for a long time to explain why we keep running into so many people who have the same faces. And in some cases, it's deliberate. It's part of the story. Like there's a really great second Doctor, Patrick Troughton story called Enemy of the World, where the Doctor turns out to be a dead ringer for Salamander, the Mexican dictator of the world. And so you have this role reversal with the two of them imitating each other and stuff. And that's not the only time we've seen that. So in Doctor Who fans have speculated that in the Doctor Who universe, there are a certain number of facial archetypes that keep recurring. And that's the explanation.
Well, I suppose when you're talking about, trillions and trillions and quadrillions of people throughout the universe, you're going to have some duplicates, apparently.
Well, but why do we keep running into those?
Luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So another interesting something to note about this episode is it introduced specifically, in not just in concept, but as a named thing, the idea of fixed points in time. Mm-hmm. The Doctor says, this is a fixed point in time; it can't be changed. And I was kind of surprised that this was the first time that came up. Mm-hmm. Although we have at other moments when the Doctor said you can't change history, right. Which goes all the way back to the Aztecs, which we've talked about, where he told
that was
Barbara that they couldn't change history.
That was more general, though. It's like you can't change history, period. And they've gradually eaten away at that over the course of the show, and now they're providing an explanation for, okay, when it's convenient for the plot, you can change history, but when it's convenient for the plot, you also can't change history.
Well, and of course, they do this whole explanation of, well, Donna's, how do you know this is a fixed point? And Doctor's, I can see it. And it's like, so he can see whether or not things are fixed points or not fixed points.
Time Lords have this sense or sixth sense about them.
And that's actually neat, because it makes the Doctor more mysterious in that he has a sense that we don't.
Yeah.
Well, it even plays off, going back to Rose, where, Rose asks the Doctor, "Who are you?" And, he says, you know how you learn that the Earth is spinning? Well, I can feel it, and that, if it stops, you'll just fall off. Things like that. So he's got this extra sense that is more than just our human five senses.
He also has an intermittently functioning
Yes,
Time Lord
yes.
sense.
Exactly.
So another thing that's related, that's sort of introduced, is this idea that it's not mentioned, but it's an idea of a destiny trap, which is your participation in the historical event makes its outcome inevitable. So, like, to use it from a different episode, when the Silence tries to kill the Doctor, they ensure the event they're trying to erase. So, their plot to kill the 11th Doctor. Or in this case, by them being at Pompeii on this date, they actually cause the eruption that history records. It thus makes it a fixed. That's what makes it a fixed point.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. So it's sort of always was an event until even before they got there. So
Always was, will have been.
yes.
And that's of course one of the great paradoxes of time travel is if an event happens and you go back and stop it, then you going back isn't actually going to happen. So then the event happens, and this is kind of reversing that of by them actually being there, the event happens. If they hadn't been there, the event never would have happened, but then it wouldn't have been recorded that it had happened.
Yeah, Avengers Endgame has a really funny moment where they talk about time travel, and they just kind of like, they blow all the other like explanations from all over the sci-fi out of the water and just go, no, it doesn't work like any of those things at all, and then they give their own explanation. But yeah.
So one interesting bit of history, I found it very interesting watching this episode again. I hadn't seen this episode in years, maybe not since it originally aired, and I didn't remember it as being a particular favorite. I remembered a moment in it that I really liked, which is where Donna speaks Latin while the TARDIS is translating in Latin.
Yes.
I remembered that. I liked that as being clever. But overall, I didn't remember liking this episode that much, and I liked it much, much more this time.
Yeah.
I think because since it originally aired, I've done a lot more study in Roman history, and I got a lot more out of this episode. They are really taking Roman history seriously in this.
Right.
Lots of stuff they say is bang on historically accurate.
Nice.
Although one bit is not necessarily. They date this episode to August 24th as the explosion of Mount Vesuvius, and the year is AD 79, and everybody agrees, okay, 79 is when Vesuvius blew. But there's actually a debate about the date that it blew.
Yeah.
And recently it was discovered that there was an inscription of October 17th, which is obviously, a couple months after August 24th. And so apparently the date they establish in this episode is not historically accurate. It looks like it really blew up later, possibly October 30th or November 1st or 23rd.
I remember reading about that. Yeah, that's the dating we have now is from Pliny.
Pliny the Elder.
The Elder,
yeah,
right.
If I'm not mistaken.
But yet they found this inscription that had been buried in the explosion. Therefore, either someone was writing like a reminder for a meeting in a couple months, or on the wall, or it was something else. Yeah, so that's very interesting.
Incidentally, now it might be the dating may come from Pliny the Younger. I'd have to check, but it's one of the Plinies. So Pliny the Elder was a Roman naturalist and statesman. His nephew Pliny the Younger was also a statesman. Who incidentally wrote about some of he provides an early reference to Christians.
Yes.
And what do you do with them in the Roman courts? But his uncle, Pliny the Elder, was a naturalist who actually died as a result of Mount Vesuvius exploding. Because he was a naturalist, he wrote a famous work called Natural History. It's a multi-volume set describing basically science as it was understood at the time, and all the different parts of the world, and what animals you find there, and plants you find there, and how the climate works. But he was so curious about Mount Vesuvius blowing up, he got too close and was overwhelmed by the fumes during the course of his naturalistic studies.
Yeah, it was
interesting.
He was nearby, like he was like across the bay, I think it was.
Yeah,
went and saw it happen. So yep. So meanwhile, in Pompeii itself, the Doctor and Donna were there while Pliny was watching this, and not only the Doctor and Donna, but two versions of Sylvester McCoy's Seventh Doctor are also running around. Right. Should have mentioned that. Yeah, the Seventh Doctor was also at Pompeii twice the day before. So it's funny that they don't run into each other. That actually would have been funny if they ran by the TARDIS, but it would have been the Seventh Doctor's TARDIS,
Yeah.
and the 10th Doctor says, no, that's not ours, and it just kept running. That would have been
exactly. Apparently, Pompeii was a big city.
Yes, apparently. So, and the other thing I want to mention before we get into this is just that this is also part of the Missing Planets arc that is going on in this season. Yep. The Pyroviles will mention that their home planet is missing.
Pyrovilia.
Yes. Meanwhile, so the Doctor is trying to take Donna to Rome. He miscalculates as he does and ends up in Pompeii. And then we have this great scene, like you mentioned, Jimmy, where the Doctor has to explain the TARDIS translation circuit to Donna, and she tries speaking Latin to someone, and they think she's speaking Celtic or Welsh.
Yeah. Me no speak Celtic.
Yeah.
What she says is Veni Vidi Vici, which is I came, I saw, I conquered.
Right.
And it gets misperceived. I love how then throughout the rest of the episode, the Doctor continues to use ordinary Latin phrases that have become part of English, like maintaining the status quo.
Yes.
And someone and Peter Capaldi leans over and says he's Celtic.
Now, here's a question I have. If Donna was thought to be speaking Celtic, because, of course, her native language is English, wouldn't the Doctor be speaking Gallifreyan?
Probably, yeah, unless he learned English.
Maybe the TARDIS translation circuits have to decide to default to one other language and then use it for consistency thereafter, at least headcanon.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Doctor does actually make this reference to having been to Rome before and says that the fire had nothing to do with him, presumably Nero's fire. So is that yet another adventure?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's from the Romans. And he says initially the fire had nothing to do with me. Well, a little bit. And what he's referring to is the fact that the first Doctor accidentally gave Nero the idea for starting the fire when he accidentally set a map of Rome on fire.
Oops. Okay. And then we have this moment where we see this strange painted girl played by Karen Gillan, who will eventually be Nebula in the Marvel Universe, but and also a companion to the 11th Doctor. But so she's playing this strange painted girl who's one of the Sybillines or the Sybils sisters that are a cult of prophets, seers, and she's spying on them.
And this was a real thing. Sybils were female prophets in the ancient world. Starting in Greece, and they were they inhaled divine vapors that enabled them to channel information about the future from the god Apollo.
Yeah, it's now legal in Colorado.
Yeah, now legal in Colorado. There was actually a war in Greece fought. I think it was called the First Holy War. It was fought over control of the Sibyl because the Sibyls were considered extremely valuable. There were a number of different Sybils. The most famous of them, I believe, was the Cumaean Sibyl, and they refer to these books of Sibylline oracles. They say at one point in the episode that such and such is written in the 13th book of the Sibylline oracles, and that's a real thing. We actually have some books now that are sometimes called the Sibylline oracles. They're not the originals. They were written later, and interestingly, they were written in part by Jews and Christians. And so even though it's ostensibly a pagan prophetess that's giving these prophecies,
right,
Jews and Christians have worked their own hidden prophecies in there. So Sybil ends up predicting stuff from the Bible, including Jesus Christ, as a kind of crypto evangelization to get pagans won over. That's why you actually see, if you look in the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo has painted the Sibyl on part of the walls of the Sistine Chapel because of this tradition with the Sibylline oracles. Those, though, are later forgeries. The original Sibylline oracles were a set of books that were actually kept secret by the Roman authorities because it was considered too important, too valuable to let this information out there to the public. But at times of major disaster, they would consult what the book said and try to derive courses of action from them. And historians are aware of some incidents where that happened that gives us tantalizing little clues about what the original authentic Sibylline oracle said.
So did they have a picture of the TARDIS in one of them?
That we don't know. Maybe if we invent a TARDIS, we can go back and find out.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we'll be self-fulfilling destiny trap there. There we go.
Yep.
So at this point is when the Doctor and Donna figure out that they're not in Rome, but they're actually in Pompeii on Volcano Day. And the young Sibylline runs to the temple to tell them that the prophecy of the blue box has been fulfilled, as Father Corey mentions, which they've apparently gotten a blue box prophecy. Now the Doctor says, "Okay, it's time to get out of here. This is all's fun, but we don't want to be here for Volcano Day." But we have TARDIS separation. Yep, the guy who thought that Donna was speaking Celtic decided to sell the TARDIS to Caecilius. Who has set it up in his home as modern art, which is ancient Greek, ancient Roman art, apparently.
And It's also another Doctor Who reference, because in the episode City of Death...
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
We have the TARDIS in an art museum in Paris, and John Cleese is standing there admiring it as modern art. And I find it interesting. The title of that episode was City of Death, and it's being used here because Pompeii is literally a city of death.
That's true. Very interesting. Nice job, Russell T Davies.
And by the way, I think it's on YouTube. If you haven't seen that scene with John Cleese where they're admiring it for modern art, it is so worth watching because it's funny.
Because then it dematerializes right in front of them, right?
Yep.
Exquisite.
Yep. I have to see that. I haven't seen that yet. So we have this family of Caecilius, his wife Metella, and Quintus, and their daughter Evelina. But Caecilius, Metella, and Quintus were taken from the real historical person of Lucius Caecilius Eucurtus, I think I'm saying that right, as well as his wife Metella and his son Quintus, all of whom are featured in Book 1 of the Cambridge Latin course, which is also set in Pompeii. And the Cambridge Latin course would be what like a lot of British schoolboys like Russell T Davies would have taken in school.
Right. And the parents actually die in Pompeii in the Cambridge Latin course, but the son survives, and then they made up the daughter for this series.
Right.
For the show.
And their daughter, because they need a girl who is going to become a Sibylline, and that's what we have here is the daughter Evelina is due to become a Sibylline. The son, who seems to be a bit of a wastrel, who like a party boy, makes a comment about Vestal virgins. What is a Vestal virgin, just for the sake of the listeners?
Vestal virgins were priests of the goddess Vesta, goddess of the hearth, and in Rome they were extremely important. You had to be a virgin in order to be a member of their order. You could be buried alive if you broke your vow of virginity. And you could, though, retire at a certain point and get married, depending on the vows you'd taken. But they were basically priestesses of Vesta that were considered vitally important for the safety and well-being of Rome.
Okay.
And they were not sexualized at all.
Right.
The whole thing is these are the pure virgins. They are not wanton women. In fact, we know what they dressed like, and they were covered from head to toe, so no skimpy priestess garments.
Right. It's sort of a modern sort of idea, like, oh, virgins, and making a big deal out of it. So the father does accuse the boy of being cavorting with Etruscans and Christians and all sorts last night because he has a hangover.
At the Thermopolium. Yeah. The Thermopolium that's the hot food shop. That's the Roman equivalent of fast food. And
so he was at the McDonald's getting drunk, apparently, and dealing with Christians. Boy, as Christians are bad influences.
Yes.
Yeah. And Etruscans. Etruscans were a people that kind of preceded the Romans, the Latins, in control of this area. We don't know a ton about them, but we know some. And they were fading in influence at this time. Christians, on the other hand, obviously were new up-and-comers, and I love the fact they mention them here. I don't know that Russell T. Davies and the author would have been aware of this, but there actually is evidence for Christians being at Pompeii and Herculaneum at this time, when on Volcano Day. We have a set of what appear to be crosses niched in the or carved in the streets of Herculaneum that lead up to a particular shop that looks like it had a cross on the wall. And I have a whole book on the crosses of Herculaneum. So I was really cool to catch that reference here.
So they're experiencing earthquakes in the city as the volcano is doing its thing, bouncing around. No one thinks of it as a volcano yet. It's never exploded. There's not even a word for volcano in Latin yet. It's just a mountain. And when they have this earthquake shaking things up in Caecilius's house, where he's an art collector with all this fragile art, they yell positions, and everyone runs around the room to grab fragile objects. And I'm like, that is straight out of Mary Poppins.
Yes,
like when the admiral, the commodore, whatever, fires his cannon off at noon in Greenwich, everything shakes, and so everyone has to grab things. They yell positions and grab things. So a funny Mary Poppins reference here in this episode.
Yeah, good thing the mountain god never got mad at night when everyone was asleep.
Yes,
exactly. Now, Jimmy, I'd heard that tale that Latin did not have a word for volcano until Pompeii. Now, do you know, is that true?
I don't know. I may be able to find out before the end of the episode, though. I'll check that out.
Because I'd heard that. I'd heard that a long time ago as well. That's kind of the story of Pompeii is until the volcano went off, they didn't even have that word, and the word was made up based off of the volcano erupting.
I mean, presumably that would mean this is the first volcano that Latin speakers would have had.
Okay, so here's some data. The English word volcano came into English around in the 1610s from Italian volcano, burning mountain, from Latin volcanus, Vulcan, Roman god of fire. The name was first applied to Mount Etna by the Romans, who believed it was the forge of Vulcan.
That's what I'd heard, yeah.
So that would, I suspect, without further research, I would suspect that predates Pompeii, because Etna's been, blowing off steam for a long time.
Yeah, I'd always heard that the Romans had placed, Vulcan's home being Etna from the beginning. Even the Greeks, I think, put him there too, because Etna was such a famous volcano.
Yeah, on the island of Sicily.
And obviously, Pompeii was the first time they'd actually seen a volcano erupt with such force,
right?
Up close, yeah,
up close, and but. So it wasn't a word that was it was a word that was out there. Just maybe the average Roman citizen wasn't familiar with it,
perhaps,
until
So the daughter Evelina is supposed to be as part of her preparation for entering the Sybils community. Says supposed to be breathing in fumes from the hypocaust. What's a hypocaust?
Oh, I didn't look up the etymology on that one.
But it's like a heating system, right?
Yeah, it's like the under heating something, under burning something.
They mentioned there it's a modern city where they've got hot springs basically coming from the mountain producing their heat.
Okay, a hypocaust is a system of central heating in a building that produces and circulates hot air below the floor of a room, and may also warm the walls with a series of pipes through which the hot air passes.
Okay, and so you would presumably, like in Rome, it would be fed by slaves feeding a furnace constantly and heating the air there. Whereas here they're so modern.
And they had that like in Roman baths.
Yes,
they would have hot rooms in Roman baths that were heated this way.
But Pompeii is situated on hot springs, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they use that, but he has these volcanic fumes essentially coming up through it, which not really good to breathe. But this girl is sitting over it, breathing in these fumes, and there's something below her looking up from inside. Some sort of rock creature face, which we'll eventually find out is the pyroviles. Then the Donna at this point, she's like, we've got to warn everybody to get out of town. We could save a lot of people here. Let's get people moving to the hills. Tell everyone to head out away from town to save them. And the doctor says you can't. You can't stop what happened. This is a fixed point in time. And she gets mad and at him for basically kind of giving up. She thinks. He calls him spaceman. That becomes Donna's standard insult for the doctor is "Oi, spaceman," which is good.
Whenever she's unhappy with him,
and the doctor, they get pretty heated with each other. They're pretty upset with each other here. He yells at her, and she yells at him, and she gives it right back at him. And then we have the Sybillines. They explain the prophecy of the blue box. And the High Priestess tells the sisters that the Sibylline oracles that Jim you mentioned before are wrong because they what they predict. And she says there's a future of prosperity and power if they follow her predictions. And in fact, there are many of these seers, apparently prophets, in Pompeii at this time, and they're all predicting this future, these events with great accuracy, right up to Volcano Day, which none of them see at all. And then after that, they predict a Pompeii will become the premier city in the world, and that will it'll become the Pompeii Empire, not the Roman Empire, and so on and so forth. And the Doctor gets kind of taken aback by how accurately these different prophets know who he is.
Yeah, the city augur refers to him as Man of Gallifrey. He also tells him she is returning, and he gets to ask who's she, and we don't know at this point, but it's Rose.
Yes.
The augur also refers to Donna as daughter of London, and says there is something on your back, which is a reference to the upcoming episode Turn Left.
Yes.
I forgot about that one.
Beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah, the daughter who's training to be a Sybil also refers to the Cascade of Medusa and refers to the Doctor as a Lord of Time, and so we got a lot of foreshadowing there.
She says his true name is hidden, though, which is interesting.
Right, but she outs him as the Doctor. She looks at Donna and says, "You call yourself noble." And they explain that for the last 17 years, since there was like an earthquake or something, the soothsayers, augurs, and haruspices in Pompeii have all been accurate. Right. So before they weren't necessarily accurate, but now they are. I love the fact that they mention haruspices because you don't hear them referred to a lot today. You'll hear about soothsayers and augurs to some degree, but a haruspix was a person who foretold the future by examining the entrails of an animal like the liver of a sheep. So you'd sacrifice the sheep to the god, yank out the liver, and look at it and say, here's what's going to happen based on what I'm seeing in this liver.
A much grosser version of reading the tea leaves.
Exactly.
So that the augur for the city is Lucius Petrus Dextrus, and he shows up at, which his name loosely translates as Stone Right
Arm. Yeah.
which he is. So right on the money there. It's some eponymy there. So he arrives at Caecilius' house, and he and the Doctor have some mumbo-jumbo pseudo-profundity sparring, which the Doctor wins with an English pun on sun and sun, S-U-N and S-O-N. I'm not sure that would translate to Latin as a good pun, but, we'll let that one slide for now. The Doctor tries to get Donna to leave, while Lucius and Caecilius is there, until Caecilius unveils for Lucius a new marble slab that he's been working on for him on contract, which turns out to be a circuit board, quite clearly a circuit board.
Yeah, even Donna says that's a circuit.
Yeah, and so at one point Lucius says to Donna the prophecy, or not to Donna but to Evelina, because she's making seeing the future. He says, the prophecies of women are limited and dull. Only the menfolk have the capacity for true perception. And Donna says, I'll tell you where the wind's blowing right now, mate. Just love Donna. Donna's awesome. So that was really funny. And then, Lucius, I get all these Latin names. Lucius's arm is pretty much all stone now. We haven't seen it yet, but, he's hiding it and refusing to shake hands with the Doctor.
Meanwhile, the daughter has like a stone patch on one of her forearms.
Right. And this is when the Doctor learns that all the soothsayers in the city, say that 10 times fast, are breathing in stone dust from Vesuvius. And then the Doctor sneaks into Lucius's house at night and finds out he's got not just one, but a whole bunch of these circuit boards, which are, somebody must be giving him this technology, information on this. Meanwhile, Dawn is trying to tell Evelina what's going to happen, but then the Sibylline sisters somehow they have some ability to hear from a distance and call for her death.
The way that happens is the Sibylline sisters, who are really a lot like the Sisterhood of Karn from Gallifrey, But they have, I mean, you have the same sisterhood with fire and prophecy and stuff. What they have is on the back of their hands, they have illustrations of eyes. We're not told are they just drawn there or are they tattoos. But early on, we see Amy Pond put her hands over her eyes so that her hand eyes replace her real eyes. And it's really creepy. And as soon as she does this, she can start talking, and the other sisters will telepathically hear her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when Donna breaks cover and defies the doctor and tells the daughter about the volcano's going to blow, the daughter immediately puts her hands over her eyes. And since she's in training, she's got the eye symbols on her hands too. And she says, the noble woman, and I love how she's the noble woman now because she's not a noble. The noble woman says that the mountain's going to blow up. And so that's how they learn. And they say, oh, it's a false prophecy. That's not what we've been told. So we're going to have to put the noble woman to death.
Okay. And at the same time, Lucius has caught the doctor sneaking about his house and sentence him to death. And the doctor responds, morituri te salutant, which loosely translates as, we who are about to die salute you, which is a quote from various places.
Gladiators in
gladiators,
the arena.
Yes. But of course, Lucius thinks he's speaking Celtic at him again. And this is where the doctor... Now, this is a pretty graphic moment, although not gory. But the doctor reveals that Lucius has a stone arm and breaks it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, the script called for David Tennant to then throw it on the floor and smash it. But
yeah,
David Tennant objected to that, thought that was over the line. So he didn't actually end up doing that. He also, in this scene, arranged the circuit boards for Petrus to make them into an energy converter. He figured out that's what they were for, but he didn't know what energy they were supposed to be converting or into what.
Right, but as he escapes, which of course he does, he knocks them all to the floor. None of them break. That's pretty good marble. But they're all mixed up like into like a puzzle piece.
And then he describes the auger as being armless enough.
Yeah.
Oh,
nice. Nice accent there. And then the Lucius calls on the Pyroviles to come and take out the doctor. And so one of these giant
stone warrior,
fiery stone men, attacks Caecilius' house up through the hypocaust. And in the midst of this, defending against it, they throw water on it to put it out, which is a good idea.
Yeah, although first it breathes on a guy with fire and disintegrates him.
Yeah,
there's nothing left.
That is a pretty hot fire. And in the midst of them trying to defend against it, Donna is taken by the Sibylline sisters, where she's where we see her next is tied up on an altar of sacrifice, and Donna is righteously outraged.
Yeah, when we get the initial close-up before they pull back to reveal the altar, we just see her face kind of, I think, upside down, and she says, you have got to be kidding me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the doctor shows up to save Donna, and he does tell them he's met the actual Sybil, and that they are nothing like her or her teachings. And this is when the High Priestess reveals herself, and she is actually a stone person. She is one of these people who's fully converted to stone now physically by the Pyroviles. Yes,
but she still has her human mind. But the Pyrovile inside her is so strong now that the doctor's able to bring out its consciousness.
Right, and we learn that the Pyroviles are trying to turn the people of Pompeii to stone before the eruption. But the doctor is armed with a weapon, with a gun. But this one just is filled with water.
Where is his classic opposition to guns here?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently he doesn't have a problem with the squirt gun, but real guns
he
are
shoots her with the water pistol, and she
I love it when one of the sisters points out that's not a real weapon, and he goes, yeah, but it's got a sting.
Yes. Which recalls a Vacation, the Chevy Chase movie.
Oh.
It'll leave a nasty welt, is how he puts it there. So we find out that the Pyrovile had crashed on Earth thousands of years ago and were shattered into dust at that time. And apparently they've regathered themselves back into stone over time, and that the earthquakes of 17 years previously woke them up. but he wonders why they can see the future, but not the eruption. Why they have this ability to see the future, but none of these soothsayers can see the eruption, and that's a key to the twist.
And even though they're using humans' latent telepathic abilities, so here we have it established humans are latently telepathic, and the pyrovile, although they can't be telepathic themselves, they're able to bring that out in their human hosts. The doctor, for some reason, thinks, well, telepathy is just okay, but knowing the future is way beyond that. That's not a psychic ability you should have. Right. And I'm going, really? That's even more trying to know the future psychically is even more common in human history than trying to be telepathic.
Right, exactly.
But we're going to have a line of dialogue later to explain why they can surprisingly know the future the way they do. Also, the doctor gets another accent-based quip in where he tells one of the stone men not to get yourself in a lava.
Yes, we're punning on lather and lava, which it's a bit of a stretch.
So
even
just like
Britain.
Some British accents leave the H out on the front of a word, mostly armless. Some others leave the R out when it's final, so lava rather than lather.
Yeah,
well, that TARDIS translation circuit is so good it can even handle puns.
Yeah,
apparently yes. But even if this one apparently is a pun too far, because I think even the doctor recognizes that it was just not a good one, and sort of regrets it. So the doctor and Donna, they climb down into the hypocaust that's inside the Sybils chamber there, whatever it is, and they make their way to the center of Vesuvius, which doesn't seem like a good day on Volcano Day, a good idea, but whatever. And they find the Pyrovile's ship or escape pod or some sort.
Yeah, an escape pod from their ship.
And the doctor realizes he has a terrible choice to make. Yeah. Vesuvius isn't going to explode, and this is why they don't see this in their future, because it wasn't going to explode. It wasn't a volcano about to erupt, because the Pyroviles have diverted all of the energy of the volcano somehow,
so that they can convert millions of people into Pyrovile.
Yes, but so the doctor, in order to stop them, he has to make the volcano erupt. But that's going to save the world, but it will kill Pompeii, as history records.
And it will kill the doctor and Donna.
Right. They think they're going to die in the blast. And that's his terrible choice that he has to make, which he does. And Donna joins him.
Yeah, Donna is willing to sacrifice herself to save the world, and they both push the lever together, which foreshadows the day of the doctor, where I don't know that Russell T. Davies, I don't think, could have envisioned what they would do with this, but the moment of the doctor causing Pompeii to perish in fire by pushing a button with other people so strongly parallels the doctor causing Gallifrey to perish in fire by pushing a button with other people at the end of the Time War.
Right. So this doctor would be remembering a similar action that he had taken. So they do survive, obviously, and it turns out that this Pyrovile escape pod can survive a volcano erupting.
They nuked the fridge.
Yes, and we're calling the Indiana Jones in the terrible movie, and they get back into Pompeii as the ash the ashes start to fall, and Dawn is trying to warn people to run for the hills, and she's
not the sea.
Not the sea, because we know that people run for the sea and end up dying there. And she stops to try to help a crying child and isn't able to. And man, this was like, wow, this was very emotionally tragic, because that these people are all dying.
And she's about to save this child, and then the child's mother grabs the child and takes it away from her. And Donna's just left standing there going, that child is going to die. I couldn't save him. Right.
The helplessness that she felt would be, I can imagine what that would feel like. And then they get back to Caecilius's house. He and Donna are about to get into the TARDIS. The doctor's thinking of Gallifrey, and he says he can't go back. You just can't go back. But Donna, in tears, asks him, just save someone, not everyone, just save someone. And so and Caecilius and his family are all huddled there in their house watching the TARDIS disappear. Like, Donna and the doctor get in. They kind of look back like, sorry, and they take off.
Initially,
and
the
they come
doctor
back.
just charges into the TARDIS ahead of Donna, and we start to hear it whirring. He is taking off, and she is still outside of the TARDIS wanting to help the family, but finally has to just run in after the doctor, at which point she makes the speech about just save someone.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. They come back, and the doctor doing the thing Russell T. Davies likes, the savior doctor with the light behind him, shining behind him. He reaches out a hand and says, "Come with me if you want to live," which he doesn't use. He doesn't do the Arnold accent, but that's about it. And they save Kekelius' family. They take them outside the city to the hills. Overlooking to the hills, and they leave them there. And this is when the doctor explains that the gift of prophecy was because the explosion. He says it opened a rift in time that echoed into the past. There's some kind of weird, timey-wimey explanation here.
And wavium.
Yeah. But now Kekelius and Metella and their family, they move to Rome and start a new life there. And we get this moment at the end where they tell their son Quintus to go, sacrifice to the household gods. And so he goes, and then we see a marble relief of the TARDIS and the Doctor and Donna as the new household gods of Kekelius' family. And that's where we end the story. So anything else you guys want to have to say? Anything I didn't cover in this discussion? That Jimmy?
Father, how about you first?
Nope, nothing for me.
Okay. I had a few things. Peter Capaldi was so much nicer in this. He was he was so sympathetic in this. Why couldn't they have written his doctor this way? I would have liked him a lot more if he was this likable. Also, I thought it was interesting that when the doctor shows up at Peter Capaldi's house, the doctor is willing to honor the household gods. And that was a real thing. In Roman houses, each house was protected over by certain tutelary deities. And so you could come into someone's house and say, who are the gods of this house? Oh, it's Mars and Jupiter. And they'd have a little shrine to Mars and Jupiter. And you could, what they are doing here is like they flick a little bit of wine to the images to honor them. And the doctor is willing to do that, which is interesting. We don't normally see the doctor participating in openly religious rites. Obviously, he doesn't really believe in these deities, but he's willing to go along with the custom of the time and greet them. Also, there's a nice bit where Peter Capaldi asks the doctor's name, and he says, "I'm Spartacus," and Donna says, "So am I." Which is, of course, is the classic 1960 film, "I'm Spartacus." "No, I'm Spartacus." And Peter Capaldi reasonably concludes, "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Spartacus." And they're, "Oh, we're not married." "Oh, brother and sister then."
Which is a recurring joke throughout this season where people mistake them as a married couple and they have to say, "Oh, no, we're not together."
Yeah.
Also, we'll see that next time.
Also, the first of the Latin phrases the doctor casually uses when Peter Capaldi says he's bought the TARDIS is, well, caveat emptor. "Oh, you're Celtic. How lovely."
Yep.
Then at the end, the wife of the family is, and by the way, Peter Capaldi is apparently the one who, in the Doctor Who universe, coins the word volcano.
Right.
But Metella, the wife, she says to the doctor, "Who are you, doctor, with your temple containing such size within?" And so she perceives the TARDIS as a temple. And that's actually related to something. And then we see in the 6 months later series where everything's going great for the family and, the son is told to honor the household gods, and he does. And in the reverse angle shot, we see the doctor and Donna have become the household gods. That actually rings true to ancient culture because you had people who, like Alexander the Great, were held to have, had fantastic abilities compared to ordinary people and were worshipped as gods during their own lifetimes. And to have somebody show up with a TARDIS and save you from Pompeii, it's believable that people in the ancient world would conceive of the Doctor as a god and would conceive of the TARDIS as some kind of temple. And that's actually something that's happened before. in the history of Doctor Who. In the first Doctor's time, he had a companion from the Trojan War named Katerina. And Katerina believed that the TARDIS was the place of perfection and the Doctor was Zeus, who was taking her to the taking her in his temple, the TARDIS, to the real place of perfection. So we've already had an ancient person from Greco-Roman culture in the Doctor Who universe mistake the Doctor for a god and view the TARDIS as a temple. Oh, also another illustration of how this could happen in the ancient world, when Paul and Barnabas were at, I think it was Philippi, they were mistaken for Zeus and Hermes.
Was it Philippi or Lyconium?
It might have been Iconium, but Barnabas was mistaken for Zeus and Paul was mistaken for Hermes since he did all the talking, Hermes being the messenger god Mercury.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But they didn't have a TARDIS.
They didn't have. They didn't even have a TARDIS, and people thought they were gods.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So, having a Doctor Who episode set in ancient Roman times, it really gives us the ability to really talk about all this stuff that we know a lot about, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To bring it all up, and I hope you all enjoy that. So, I think before we finish up, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including this week Stuart J, Father Darrell, William C, Jeremy S, and Joanne M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows we're doing at StarQuest, including the new shows we've got coming out, including American Catholic History, which I mentioned before. That's only possible because people like you give us your support, your financial support, by visiting sqpn.com/give. Without you, we can't do anything. So we really do appreciate that. So that's it from us. What did you think of this 10th Doctor story, The Fires of Pompeii, and what we had to say about it? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave us some feedback there, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 4th Doctor story called Revenge of the Cybermen. Until then, Jimmy Aiken, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, you fought her off with a water pistol. I bloody love you.
Right. This is going to be fun.